I've seen this pattern repeat itself more times than I can count. The men who do everything right still feel invisible. They follow the rules. They build their bodies. They build their careers. They upgrade their lives piece by piece. And yet, when they sit across from a woman, something is missing. Interest without hunger. Politeness without desire. Meanwhile, another man walks into the same room with nothing to prove. No impressive resume. No visible status. And women lean toward him. They chase him. They become restless when he pulls away. This isn't luck. And it isn't mystery. It's psychology. What you've been taught about attraction didn't fail because you executed it poorly. It failed because it was backwards from the start. The traits you believe make you desirable may be the very traits draining desire from the room. Not because they're wrong, but because they point to the wrong source of value. Tonight, I'm going to dismantle that belief. Quietly, precisely, and once you see what actually creates obsession, you won't be able to unsee it. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. If this perspective resonates, consider subscribing. Stay with me. Before anything else can make sense, one belief has to be dismantled. It's the belief most men never question, because it's been repeated for so long it feels like fact. I believed it too once. The idea that attraction works like a scoreboard, that if you stack enough points in the right categories, desire will appear automatically. I was told there was a formula. Get in shape, earn more money, improve your social skills, learn how to speak, how to tease, how to project confidence, collect proof, display value, let the results come. It sounded logical, clean, almost scientific. If attraction is a reward, then effort must be the currency. So I followed the plan, and so did countless other men. We worked longer hours. We tracked calories. We measured progress. We polished the outside of our lives until it looked impressive from every angle. On paper, we became exactly what we were told women wanted. But the outcome didn't match the promise. Dates happened, but they felt flat. Conversations were polite, controlled, careful. Interest existed, but it never deepened. Women didn't lean in. They didn't chase. They didn't fear losing us. We were tolerated, sometimes admired, rarely desired. What confused us most was the inconsistency, because at the same time we watched other men succeed effortlessly. Men with average bodies, men without money or status, men who didn't seem to be doing anything right. And yet women reacted to them differently, emotionally, intensely, sometimes irrationally. That contradiction is where frustration turns into bitterness. Because when you've done everything you were told to do and it still doesn't work, the natural assumption is that something must be wrong with you, or worse, that women are dishonest about what they want. Neither conclusion is true. The real problem is the blueprint itself. Society sells attraction as an external transaction. Improve yourself visibly, and desire will follow. But attraction doesn't respond to effort. It responds to perception. And perception is shaped long before achievements enter the picture. When a woman meets you, she isn't evaluating your resume. She isn't auditing your discipline or calculating your long-term potential. Those things matter later, if at all. If don't, in the beginning, something else is happening entirely. Something faster, quieter, more primitive. She's responding to your internal state. This is where the checklist model collapses. Because external achievements don't communicate internal certainty. In fact, they often hide the opposite. Many men build their lives outward because inwardly they don't feel solid. They chase proof because they don't feel inherently valuable. And that tension leaks through no matter how polished the exterior looks. I've seen men with everything still seeking permission to exist, still scanning faces for approval, still adjusting themselves in real time, hoping to be received. That energy is unmistakable, and it kills attraction instantly. The lie isn't that improvement is bad. The lie is that improvement creates desire. Women don't fall in love with what you've accumulated. They fall in love with a man who moves through the world without asking to be chosen. They don't get addicted to your results. They get addicted to who you are when no one is applauding. This is the part most men resist because it forces an uncomfortable realization. If attraction isn't a reward for effort, then effort alone can't save you. You can do everything right externally and still be invisible. Not because you lack value, but because you're signaling the wrong kind of value. When you try to prove yourself, you'll reveal that you don't feel proven. When you try to impress, you reveal that you don't feel impressive. The very act of demonstration communicates absence, not presence. And women are exquisitely sensitive to that gap. That's why the men who seem to try the least often succeed the most. They aren't performing value, they're resting in it. Or at least they appear to be. And appearance is everything at this level. The checklist model also creates a dangerous psychological trap. It postpones worth. It tells men there'll be enough later, after the body changes, after the income increases, after the next milestone. So they live in a permanent state of becoming never arriving, always one step away from deserving desire. Women can feel that postponement. They feel when a man is not at home in himself, when he's reaching forward instead of standing where he is. And no amount of success compensates for that instability. This is why so many men feel exhausted in dating. They're not just interacting with women, they're maintaining an image, managing outcomes, monitoring reactions. Every interaction becomes a test they believe they have to pass. That pressure doesn't create connection, it creates distance. The men who understand attraction at a deeper level move differently. They don't enter rooms asking what they can get. They don't speak hoping to be liked. They aren't assembling themselves in front of someone else's gaze. They're already assembled. And that difference is felt immediately. The industry that profits from male insecurity doesn't want this understood, because you can't sell internal resolution as a quick fix. You can't package self-acceptance into a program with milestones and metrics. There's no endless upgrade path when the core issue dissolves. So instead, men are kept busy, improving, optimizing, hustling, distracted from the fact that attraction was never about becoming more. It was about needing less. This doesn't mean you abandon ambition. It means ambition stops being a plea for validation. It stops being a substitute for self-worth. When your achievements come from expression instead of compensation, they no longer leak desperation. That shift is subtle, but it changes everything. Until you see this clearly, dating will feel like effort without leverage, progress without momentum. Once you do, the entire dynamic reverses. You stop chasing reactions, and reactions begin to chase you. But to understand how that reversal happens, we need to talk about value. Not the kind you can count, the kind that's felt. To understand why some men trigger obsession while others trigger indifference, I had to let go of another comforting illusion, the idea that value is objective, that it can be measured, compared, and agreed upon. Income, appearance, status, credentials. These feel solid because they can be counted. But attraction doesn't respond to numbers. It responds to perception. This is where most conversations about attraction quietly fail. What actually governs desire is something far less visible. I call it sexual market value discrepancy. Not because it's transactional, but because it explains a consistent psychological pattern. Women develop deep consuming attraction only when they perceive a man's value as higher than their own. Not morally, not socially, internally. And perception is everything. Two men can stand in the same room with radically different outcomes, even if one has every external advantage. Because sexual market value is not determined by what you possess. It's determined by how you exist. I've seen this play out in real time. Picture a small group at a bar. Casual conversation, nothing dramatic. One man is wealthy, physically impressive, dressed with precision. His life is visibly optimized. Another man has none of that. Average clothes, no signs of status, nothing to point at. Then someone makes an offhand comment. The second man responds. Not quickly, not loudly, just accurately. A remark that lands cleanly. No effort to be funny, no attempt to impress. He says it as if it couldn't have been said any other way. In that moment, the room shifts. The women don't analyze why. They don't compare resumes. They feel something recalibrate. Attention moves. Interest sharpens. Not because the response was clever, but because of how it was delivered. Calm, certain, unconcerned with reaction. That single moment communicated more value than years of visible achievement, because it revealed an internal state that can't be faked. This is what most men miss. Sexual market value is energetic, not material. It's not about inventory. It's about orientation, how you relate to yourself, how you occupy space, whether you're anchored or reaching. A man who is internally stable projects a kind of quiet gravity. He doesn't need to dominate or perform. He doesn't scan faces for approval. He speaks when there's something to say and stops when there isn't. That restraint signals abundance, not of resources, but of self. By contrast, a man with impressive achievements but an unstable internal state leaks anxiety. He may not say anything wrong, but something feels off. His words are filtered through outcome, his posture through hope, his silence through tension. Women don't consciously identify this. They register it, and they adjust. This is why so many men feel confused. They did the work. They built the life. But they're still being ranked lower than men who seemingly did less. The mistake is assuming the ranking is about effort. It isn't. It's about frame. Sexual market value is assigned within seconds. Before logic, before context, before history. And once assigned, it's difficult to reverse. Not because women are stubborn, but because first impressions at the level of energy are remarkably accurate. Men want to believe they can compensate. That if they just show enough proof, perception will change. Sometimes it does. Often it doesn't. Because proof doesn't override presence. It either reinforces it or contradicts it. If your internal state says, "I'm solid," achievements amplify that message. If your internal state says, "I need this to be enough," achievements expose the need. That exposure lowers perceived value. This is the uncomfortable truth. Many men build external success, hoping it will convince the world of something they haven't convinced themselves of yet. Women feel that delay, that gap between appearance and belief, and they respond by disengaging emotionally. The men who generate obsession don't try to raise their perceived value. They don't even think in those terms. They simply operate from a state that places them above the dynamic, not superior, unaffected. This is where the discrepancy emerges. When a woman senses that a man is not seeking her validation, not orienting his identity around her reaction, something flips. She feels lower in the dynamic, not in worth, but in certainty. And that uncertainty pulls her in. Desire feeds on unresolved tension. And nothing creates tension like a man who is complete without resolution. This has nothing to do with arrogance. Arrogance is brittle. It seeks dominance to protect insecurity. The internal state I'm describing is quiet, grounded, almost neutral. It doesn't push, it doesn't pull, it remains. Women are not attracted to men who think they are better. They are attracted to men who don't need to be better. The difference is subtle but decisive. Once you understand this, the obsession phenomenon stops looking mysterious. Of course, women chase the man who isn't chasing them. Of course, they invest emotionally in the man who doesn't need their investment. The dynamic is self-reinforcing. The more a man is internally anchored, the less he seeks confirmation. The less he seeks confirmation, the more he's perceived as higher value. The more he's perceived as higher value, the more women pursue. And the more they pursue, the more the discrepancy grows. Men who don't understand this try to reverse engineer it with tactics. They pull away artificially. They delay texts. They manufacture scarcity. But without the internal state to support it, those behaviors feel hollow. Women sense the manipulation. The tension collapses. You can't fake being above the dynamic if you're secretly invested in the outcome. Sexual market value discrepancy only works when it's real. This is why the broke man with internal certainty often outranks the successful man with internal doubt. Not forever, not in every context, but in the realm of attraction, in the moment where desire is formed, certainty beats security every time. Security is static. Certainty is alive. And until men stop confusing the two, they'll keep building lives that look impressive, but feel empty in the presence of women. To move forward, another layer has to be exposed. Because value alone doesn't create obsession. It has to be framed. And women are masters at framing. Once value is perceived, it doesn't exist in isolation. It's placed inside a frame, and that frame determines everything that follows. This is where many men lose without realizing a game is even being played. Women operate on what I call a frame of value system. It's not conscious. It's not malicious. It's automatic. When a woman encounters a man, she doesn't ask whether he is good or bad, successful or unsuccessful. She asks something far simpler and far more decisive. Where does he stand relative to me? That question is answered almost immediately. Not through words, but through orientation. Does he lean toward her approval, or does he remain oriented toward himself? Does his mood shift based on her reactions, or does it remain steady regardless? Does he speak to express or to impress? Within seconds, she places him into one of two categories: above me or below me. There is no neutral. Men find this unfair because they assume effort should earn consideration. But attraction isn't fair, it's efficient. The mind looks for shortcuts, and energy is the fastest shortcut there is. If she perceives you as above her, something subtle but powerful begins. Curiosity, attention, a quiet recalibration of her own behavior. She becomes more careful with her words, more aware of your presence, more invested in how she's being seen. This is the beginning of emotional pursuit. If she perceives you as below her, the opposite happens. Her interest deflates, not abruptly, gradually. She becomes polite, friendly, distant. You're safe, predictable, contained. Desire doesn't live there. What most men don't realize is how easily they place themselves into the lower category. Not through mistakes, but through effort. Trying to impress is the fastest way to signal lower value. When you work to prove your worth, you reveal that you don't believe it's already established. When you adjust yourself mid-interaction, hoping for a better response, you communicate dependence. When you seek reassurance through compliments, reactions, or outcomes, you announce that your internal state is negotiable. Women read this instantly, and once the frame is set, it's difficult to escape. This is the cruel irony. The men who want attraction the most often destroy it by trying too hard to earn it. They overfunction emotionally. They lean forward. They give more than is asked. They offer value prematurely. All of it feels generous. All of it feels logical. And all of it lowers their position in the frame. Meanwhile, the man who doesn't try to impress anyone sends a radically different signal. Not because he's withholding, but because he's complete. He doesn't need to be seen a certain way. He doesn't need the interaction to go anywhere. He's comfortable whether she stays or leaves. That comfort places him above the dynamic. This doesn't mean he's indifferent or cold. It means his self-worth isn't contingent on her response. He can enjoy the interaction without attaching to it. And that detachment is misinterpreted in the best possible way as value. Women don't want men who need them. They want men who choose them. And choice only exists when need is absent. This is why men who do everything right often feel invisible. They're too invested. They're too eager to demonstrate. They mistake effort for strength. But strength is self-contained. It doesn't reach. It doesn't chase. It allows. The frame of value is also why advice centered on tactics fails long-term. You can memorize lines. You can follow rules. You can execute behaviors. But if those behaviors are driven by a need for approval, they backfire. The woman may not know why, but she feels the incongruence. Congruence is alignment between internal state and external behavior. When a man behaves confidently but feels insecure, the mismatch leaks through micro-expressions, timing, tone, and tension. Women are exquisitely attuned to these signals. Evolution demanded it. The men who consistently trigger attraction aren't perfect communicators. They're consistent internally. Their behavior matches their state. They don't say things to get reactions. They say things because they mean them. And they're unaffected by how those things land. That emotional independence is what places them above. This is also why rejection doesn't damage their value. When a woman pulls away and a man collapses emotionally, he confirms that she held power over his state. When a woman pulls away and a man remains steady, she feels the loss instead. The frame reverses. Most men fear losing women, so they avoid tension. They avoid silence. They avoid disagreement. They smooth everything out. But attraction requires polarity, and polarity requires the willingness to stand alone. The man who can disagree calmly, who can sit in silence without filling it, who can let a moment pass without forcing connection, that man signals something rare in modern society: internal solidity. This solidity creates psychological pressure, not on the man, but on the woman. She feels the imbalance. She feels herself leaning in while he remains centered. That imbalance creates movement, investment, attachment. Men often ask how to create this effect. They want steps, techniques, scripts. But the frame of value cannot be created externally. It emerges naturally when a man stops negotiating his worth. The moment you stop asking, "How am I doing?" and start asking, "Do I enjoy this?" the frame begins to shift. The moment your attention turns inward instead of outward, you move up in the hierarchy. Not because you're superior, but because you're no longer seeking elevation. That's the paradox. The men placed in the above me category are rarely trying to be there. They simply refuse to place themselves below. They don't audition. They don't plead. They don't posture. They remain. And because they remain, women adjust. Once you see this dynamic clearly, you can't unsee it. You start noticing how often attraction collapses not from a lack of value, but from a lack of frame. From men abandoning their center in an attempt to secure outcomes. But frame alone isn't enough to sustain obsession. There's another mechanism that amplifies it, one that most men misunderstand completely. And when misunderstood, it becomes self-sabotage. That mechanism is pre-selection. Pre-selection is one of the most powerful accelerators of attraction. It's also one of the most misused. Most men hear the term and immediately reduce it to behavior. Flirting in front of other women, mentioning past relationships, hinting at sexual options, trying to look desired. That misunderstanding ruins everything. Real pre-selection is not something you perform. It's something that's felt. And the difference matters more than any technique ever could. At its core, pre-selection is simple. Women are drawn to men who are already desired by other women, not because women are competitive by nature, but because desire signals value. If others see something, there must be something to see. That's the subconscious logic. But here's where most men go wrong. They try to manufacture the signal instead of embodying the source. When a man talks about other women to provoke jealousy, he reveals insecurity. When he flirts performatively to show options, he reveals effort. When he name-drops experiences or exaggerates interest from others, he reveals a need to be seen as valuable. All of that places him lower in the frame. True pre-selection doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. It's quiet. It shows up as ease, as patience, as a lack of urgency. It's the energy of a man who knows he has options not because he's counting them, but because he doesn't need to prove them. Women don't respond to evidence. They respond to orientation. When a woman senses that you're not waiting on her response to feel settled, curiosity begins. She wonders why. Not consciously, emotionally. She notices that you're not rushing, that you're not seeking reassurance, that you're not adjusting your behavior to secure her interest. The curiosity is the first stage of obsession. It's important to understand this. Pre-selection does not make women competitive. It makes them inquisitive. Competition is secondary. Curiosity comes first. She begins to ask herself what others might be seeing, what she might be missing, why this man feels different. That internal questioning pulls her in. But pre-selection only works when it's authentic. Women have evolved to detect incongruence at a subconscious level. If you're projecting abundance while internally desperate, the mismatch is felt immediately. And once felt attraction collapses. This is why men who fake it often get short-term attention but long-term rejection. The act can't sustain itself. The internal state always leaks through. There's another misunderstanding here that needs correction. Pre-selection doesn't require women physically present. It doesn't require visible competition. It doesn't require stories or signals. In many cases, it has nothing to do with other women at all. What women are actually responding to is the absence of need. A man who doesn't need her attention to feel complete behaves differently. He listens without urgency. He speaks without pressure. He allows silence without discomfort. Those behaviors suggest options without ever referencing them. That suggestion is enough. Contrast this with a man who wants her approval. He texts quickly, He explains himself. He over-delivers. He offers reassurance before it's asked for. None of this is overtly wrong, but it communicates a single underlying message. I don't have enough. Women feel that message even when they can't articulate it. And it kills desire because desire requires tension. Tension cannot exist when one side is already leaning. Pre-selection amplifies attraction only when it's paired with internal confidence. Without that foundation, it becomes performative and fragile. With it, it becomes effortless. This brings us to a deeper distinction that most men never make. The difference between internal value and external value. External value is what you can point to. Money, status, fitness, skills. These things matter in the world. They open doors. They create opportunities. But they do not create attraction on their own. Internal value is how you relate to yourself. Whether you trust your own worth, whether you feel complete without external validation, whether your sense of identity is stable regardless of outcomes. Most men spend their lives building external value while neglecting the internal. They assume one will eventually produce the other. That success will generate confidence. That achievement will resolve insecurity. It rarely does. I've watched men gain everything they thought they wanted and still operate from the same anxious core. They have more, but they don't feel more. So they keep reaching, keep proving, keep chasing reactions. Women sense that hunger immediately. You can give a man wealth recognition and physical perfection. If his internal state remains insecure, he will still come across as needy. And neediness nullifies value in the context of attraction. Meanwhile, a man with average circumstances but strong internal grounding often feels expansive. He's not compensating, he's expressing. His confidence isn't loud, it's assumed. And that assumption changes how women respond to him. Women are not attracted to assets. They are attracted to energy. They don't fall in love with what you can provide. They fall in love with how you make them feel. And how you make them feel is a reflection of how you feel about yourself. When your confidence is rooted in external achievements, it's conditional. It rises when things go well and collapses when they don't. Women feel that instability. It makes attraction unsafe. When your confidence is rooted in self-acceptance, it's consistent. You're steady whether you're winning or losing. That steadiness creates trust. Trust creates relaxation. Relaxation opens the door to desire. This is why men who are internally grounded often appear indifferent to outcomes, not because they don't care, but because their identity isn't at stake. They don't need the interaction to validate them, so they're free to enjoy it for what it is. That freedom is intoxicating. The men who create obsession don't ask themselves how to be desired. They ask themselves how to be at peace. And that shift changes everything. It removes urgency. It removes pressure. It removes the invisible contract that says, I need this to go well. Without that contract, women feel free to lean in, to invest, to wonder. But internal value alone isn't enough. It has to be protected. And the fastest way men give their power away is by seeking validation. That's the next layer that has to be confronted. Nothing erodes attraction faster than the need to be validated. It doesn't matter how subtle the behavior is. The moment a man looks to a woman to confirm his worth, the dynamic shifts. Quietly, permanently. I call this the validation death spiral, and it's responsible for more failed connections than any lack of looks, money, or experience. Validation seeking doesn't always look like insecurity. Often it hides behind success, behind generosity, behind attentiveness. Men assume that because they're offering something valuable, the behavior must be attractive. But motivation matters more than behavior. When your emotional stability depends on her response, you've surrendered leverage. Most men don't realize how often they do this. They wait for replies to feel settled. They replay conversations looking for signs of approval. They feel elevated by compliments and deflated by silence. Their internal state rises and falls based on how a woman is treating them. Women feel this dependence immediately. The problem isn't caring. The problem is attachment to outcome. When a woman senses that her attention regulates your emotional state, desire evaporates, not because she's cruel, but because power has shifted too far in one direction. Attraction requires polarity, and polarity collapses when one side is emotionally dependent. Men who struggle the most in dating are often the ones who have built impressive lives, but never learned how to validate themselves. They outsourced their sense of worth to results, to recognition, to being admired. And when those external markers are no longer actively affirmed, anxiety sets in. Women don't want to be emotional regulators. They want to be companions. This is where self-validation becomes non-negotiable. A self-validated man knows who he is without needing confirmation. Compliments don't inflate him. Criticism doesn't destabilize him. He receives feedback without attaching his identity to it. That neutrality is rare, and rarity is attractive. When a woman compliments a self-validated man, he accepts it without reaching for more. When she pulls back, he doesn't chase reassurance. He remains steady. That steadiness creates contrast, and contrast creates interest. Most people are desperate for approval. They seek it everywhere, from social media, from work, from relationships. So when a woman encounters a man who doesn't need her approval, something shifts in her perception. His value rises because it isn't contingent. This doesn't mean emotional distance. It means emotional independence. A self-validated man can be warm without being needy, engaged without being attached, present without being invested in a specific outcome. Those distinctions matter more than most men realize. Presence is the next piece that changes everything. Most men are never fully present with women. Their bodies are there, but their minds are elsewhere. Planning, performing, anticipating. They're thinking about what to say next, how they're being perceived, where the interaction is going. That internal noise creates disconnection. When a man can be fully present, something unusual happens. He listens without interruption. He allows pauses. He doesn't rush to fill space. His attention is stable and unfragmented. Women feel this immediately. Presence makes a woman feel seen, not evaluated, not managed. Seen. This kind of presence communicates confidence without words. It suggests that the man is comfortable with himself and the moment. That comfort allows the woman to relax, and relaxation is a prerequisite for desire. Most men talk too much because they're trying to control the interaction. They mistake activity for engagement. But true engagement is receptive. It listens as much as it speaks. It responds rather than performs. Silence is especially revealing. A man who is uncomfortable with silence will rush to fill it. A man who is comfortable with silence will let it exist. Women notice the difference. Comfort with silence signals internal calm. Calm signals safety. Safety opens the door to emotional intimacy. This is why presence cannot be faked. If you're anxious internally, silence feels threatening. If you're grounded internally, silence feels neutral. Women feel that distinction even if they don't consciously analyze it. Authenticity ties all of this together. Most men live according to desires that aren't their own. They want the things they've been told to want. Bodies, cars, lifestyles. Not because those things matter to them intrinsically, but because they believe those things will make them worthy. Very few men ever ask themselves what they actually want. Not what will impress, not what will elevate their status, but what genuinely aligns with who they are. The men who create deep attraction have done that work. They've stripped away borrowed desires. They've defined success on their own terms. And because of that, they move through the world with coherence. Coherence is alignment between values, actions, and identity. When a man is coherent, his energy is clean. There's no internal contradiction. He isn't chasing something to fill a hole. He's expressing something that already exists. Women feel this as authenticity. Authenticity doesn't guarantee approval. In fact, it often invites rejection. But it creates real attraction because it's rare. Most people are performing versions of themselves they think will be accepted. A man who refuses to perform stands out immediately. This is also where many men get confused about confidence. They think confidence comes from improvement, from becoming someone better. But improvement without acceptance creates conditional confidence. It only exists when progress is visible. Real confidence comes from self-acceptance, from being okay with who you are right now, not resigned, not stagnant, but at peace. When you build confidence through achievement, you're telling yourself that you're not enough yet. That message gets internalized, and no amount of success fully overrides it. This is why some highly successful men are still insecure, and why some ordinary men are unshakably confident. The difference isn't outcome, it's relationship with self. Once a man stops needing validation, stops chasing approval, stops outsourcing his worth, his presence changes. His energy settles. His behavior becomes simpler, and women respond differently. But there's another place where men unknowingly give away their power. And it's one of the most counterintuitive aspects of attraction. It has to do with sex. When sex becomes the primary goal, everything distorts. Intentions narrow, presence collapses, power shifts. Most men don't notice it happening because it feels natural to want sex. But wanting something and orienting your identity around getting it are not the same thing. The moment your happiness depends on whether a woman sleeps with you, you hand her control over your emotional state. She becomes the gatekeeper of your confidence, your mood, your sense of worth. Even if you never say it out loud, that dependence shapes how you move. Women feel that shift immediately. It shows up in urgency, in over-accommodation, in subtle compliance. The man starts adjusting himself to keep the possibility alive. He overlooks things he wouldn't otherwise tolerate. He agrees when he doesn't fully agree. He invests more than the moment calls for. From the outside, this can look like kindness or enthusiasm. From the inside, it's leverage being surrendered. When a woman knows that sex is your real objective, she understands that you have something to lose. That knowledge changes the dynamic. She doesn't need to manipulate consciously. The imbalance already exists. Her interest rises and falls while your investment remains high. Attraction does not grow in that environment. It stalls. The men who hold their power understand something most others resist. Sex cannot be the center, not because it's unimportant, but because making it central makes you dependent. And dependence is the opposite of desire. When sex is no longer the prize, something strange happens. Conversations relax. Tension becomes playful instead of anxious. The interaction becomes about connection rather than extraction. Women feel the difference instantly. This is where one of the most counterintuitive principles of attraction appears. Sometimes the most attractive move a man can make is to say no. Turning down sex confuses men because they've been taught that opportunity equals success. But success in attraction isn't measured by access. It's measured by self-control. When a man declines sex because he's not in the right headspace, because the connection isn't there yet, or simply because he doesn't feel like it, he sends a powerful signal. He's not driven by hunger. He has options. He values alignment over impulse. That restraint is rare. Most men are starved for attention. They accept any opportunity because they're afraid another won't come. That fear leaks through their behavior. Women sense it, and it lowers perceived value. The man who can walk away from sex without resentment or explanation demonstrates abundance. Not sexual abundance necessarily, but internal abundance. He's not desperate for stimulation. He's grounded in himself. This doesn't mean being rigid or moralistic. It means being sovereign over your desires, rather than ruled by them. At the core of this sovereignty is stoicism. Stoicism is often misunderstood as emotional suppression. It isn't. It's emotional regulation, the ability to experience feelings without being controlled by them, the ability to remain centered regardless of external stimuli. In attraction, stoicism is foundational. Women test men constantly, not maliciously, instinctively. They test emotional stability. They test boundaries. They test reactions. They observe how a man responds to uncertainty, delay, and challenge. A reactive man fails these tests without knowing they're happening. He becomes irritated when she pulls away, elated when she leans in, anxious when she's distant. His internal state mirrors her behavior. That mirroring hands her power. A stoic man remains steady. He doesn't withdraw emotionally when tested. He doesn't chase reassurance. He doesn't escalate when given approval. His internal state remains largely unchanged. Calm, observant, grounded. This steadiness communicates strength in a way no display ever could. Women are drawn to men who can remain calm under pressure because calm suggests capacity. A man who is not destabilized by uncertainty is perceived as someone who can handle life, someone reliable, someone safe. Safety does not kill attraction. Emotional volatility does. Stoicism also allows a man to be fully present. When you're not worried about outcomes, you can actually experience the moment. You're not performing. You're not anticipating. You're not calculating. You're there. That presence deepens connection far more than excitement ever could. Women feel met rather than managed. And being met emotionally is rare in a world full of distracted people. Understanding this requires recognizing a fundamental difference between how men and women experience attraction. Men are primarily visual. Women are primarily emotional. Men often fixate on how they look. Women fixate on how they feel. This is why women can become deeply attached to men who aren't physically remarkable, and why they can feel nothing for men who are objectively attractive. The emotional experience matters more than the visual input. When a man makes a woman feel calm, curious, and emotionally engaged, desire follows. When he makes her feel pressured, evaluated, or responsible for his emotions, it disappears. Groundedness is what bridges this gap. A grounded man is comfortable with himself, his life, and his current circumstances. He's not scrambling for the next thing to complete him. He's not reacting to every stimulus. He has a center. That center acts like gravity. People feel it, women especially. In a society saturated with anxiety and reactivity, groundedness stands out. It makes women feel safe without being boring. It creates attraction without effort, because effort implies need. Groundedness also protects men from the traps that kill attraction: neediness, validation seeking, outcome dependence, emotional volatility. These behaviors disappear naturally when a man is anchored internally. The ultimate source of that anchoring is internal peace. Internal peace is not resignation. It's not complacency. It's acceptance without self-rejection. It's being okay with who you are while still choosing to grow. Most men improve themselves from a place of self-disgust. They believe they need to become someone else to be worthy. That belief poisons confidence at the root. When improvement comes from self-respect instead of self-loathing, everything changes. Growth becomes expression rather than compensation. Confidence becomes stable rather than conditional. Internal peace produces several unmistakable qualities. You stop seeking validation. You become comfortable with solitude. Silence no longer threatens you. You can give without needing something in return. That energy is deeply attractive because it's rare. Most people are internally unsettled. They carry unresolved insecurity into every interaction. When a woman encounters a man who is genuinely at peace, it stands out immediately. She doesn't always understand why she's drawn in. She just is. But peace alone isn't the end. Attraction deepens through connection, not shared hobbies, not compatibility checklists. Real connection. And most men never learn how to create it. Connection is not built through technique. It's built through contact. Real contact. Emotional, energetic, and present. Most men never reach it because they're too busy managing themselves. They ask questions strategically. They listen selectively. They respond with intention rather than truth. On the surface, conversations happen, but underneath, nothing meets. Women feel this immediately. True connection requires the ability to meet a woman where she is not where you want the interaction to go. It requires reading her emotional state and responding authentically, not steering the exchange toward an outcome. That difference is everything. A man who is focused on results listens to reply. A man who is grounded listens to understand. When you are fully present, you notice subtle shifts, changes in tone, in pacing, in energy. You respond naturally because you're not following a script. You're engaged. That engagement creates resonance. Resonance creates attachment. Most men confuse connection with compatibility. Shared interests, similar backgrounds, common goals. These things matter later. They do not create initial attraction. Emotional attunement does. Connection happens when a woman feels emotionally met without being consumed. When she feels understood without being analyzed. When she feels seen without being claimed. That balance is rare. To maintain it, a man must be able to hold his masculine core. Masculine energy is not dominance or control. It's presence, direction, stability. The ability to remain grounded while emotion flows around you. In modern society, many men have lost touch with this energy. They've become reactive, emotionally dependent, validation-oriented, traits that destabilize polarity. At the same time, many women have been forced to develop traditionally masculine traits to navigate the world. Control, assertiveness, self-reliance. When a woman encounters a man who is truly grounded, something shifts. She no longer has to hold everything together. She can relax. That relaxation allows her feminine energy to surface. Emotion, intuition, receptivity. When masculine and feminine energies meet in balance, attraction deepens naturally, not through effort, through alignment. This dynamic has nothing to do with gender roles or outdated expectations. It's about polarity, and polarity is what creates spark. Most men kill polarity by overfunctioning emotionally. They anticipate needs. They reassure preemptively. They try to manage feelings. In doing so, they remove space. And without space, desire suffocates. A grounded man allows space. He doesn't rush to fix emotions. He doesn't panic when tension appears. He trusts the process. The trust creates safety. Safety allows attraction to mature rather than spike and collapse. Non-reactivity is the trait that protects all of this. Non-reactivity does not mean indifference. It means emotional sovereignty. When a woman tests, withdraws, or challenges, a non-reactive man remains centered. He observes rather than reacts. He responds rather than explodes. This behavior communicates several things simultaneously. Emotional maturity, confidence, abundance, leadership, mystery. A man who doesn't react predictably can't be easily manipulated. That unpredictability forces investment. A woman has to engage emotionally to understand where she stands. Engagement leads to attachment. Reactive men are easy to read, easy to control, easy to dismiss. Non-reactive men create friction, and friction creates heat. This doesn't mean playing games. It means not handing over your emotional state to external circumstances. Your mood is not up for negotiation. Your identity is not contingent on approval. When a woman senses that she can't easily destabilize you, respect forms. And respect is a prerequisite for desire. Respect does not come from dominance. It comes from consistency, from knowing who you are, and not abandoning that under pressure. Many men fear that if they don't react, they'll seem cold. The opposite is true. Emotional steadiness allows warmth without need, interest without attachment, care without collapse. This is the difference between strength and rigidity. Rigidity resists emotion. Strength holds it. When a man can hold emotional space without trying to control it, women feel safe expressing themselves. They open, they invest, they reveal. That vulnerability deepens attraction far more than charm ever could. At this stage, obsession is no longer about pursuit. It's about attachment. And attachment forms when a woman feels emotionally invested without feeling responsible. Investment grows when she contributes, when she wonders, when she reaches. Non-reactivity encourages this because it removes certainty. Not insecurity, but mystery. Mystery does not come from withholding information. It comes from depth, from not being fully knowable because you are not trying to be known. Men who overshare early destroy mystery. They reveal everything to be understood. But being understood is not the same as being felt. The men who create obsession are not chasing emotional reactions. They're creating emotional space. They're not forcing connection. They're allowing it to form. This requires patience, and patience requires abundance. Not abundance of women, abundance of self. A man who enjoys his own life, his own solitude, his own rhythm does not need constant engagement. He doesn't rush intimacy. He doesn't force progression. He lets things unfold. Women feel this pacing as confidence, as trust in himself, as leadership. Leadership in attraction is not about direction. It's about stability. When a woman feels that a man is stable regardless of outcome, she feels free to explore emotionally. This is why obsession never forms around men who are chasing. Chasing compresses space. It collapses polarity. It communicates fear of loss. The man who is willing to lose retains power. Not because he's indifferent, but because he's complete. Understanding all of this shifts how you approach not just dating, but life. You stop trying to extract experiences. You start inhabiting them. You stop managing perception. You start embodying truth. And when you do, attraction becomes a byproduct rather than a pursuit. But embodiment alone is not enough. These principles have to be lived, not understood. They have to be applied deliberately, consistently, and honestly. That's where everything comes together. Once you understand the mechanics of attraction, the mistake is thinking the work is finished. Insight alone changes nothing if it isn't translated into lived behavior. Most men agree with these ideas intellectually, then return to the same patterns under pressure. That's why integration matters more than understanding. Everything you've read so far points to one core truth. Attraction is not created by adding traits. It's created by removing dependence. Dependence on approval. Dependence on outcomes. Dependence on being chosen. When those dependencies dissolve, something else takes their place. Groundedness. A grounded man does not need constant stimulation to feel alive. He does not need reassurance to feel secure. He does not need attention to feel worthy. His sense of self is not up for negotiation. This groundedness changes how women experience him. Most men live in a state of subtle anxiety, not panic, but low-grade restlessness. Always thinking about the next step, the next improvement, the next win. They bring that restlessness into every interaction. Women feel it as pressure even when nothing is being asked. A grounded man brings the opposite energy. He brings stillness. Stillness is rare, and rarity creates gravity. When a woman interacts with a grounded man, she feels herself slowing down. Her nervous system responds. Her body relaxes. Her mind becomes quieter. She may not know why she feels calmer around him, but she does. Calm does not eliminate attraction. It deepens it. This is where many men get confused. They equate attraction with excitement, with intensity, with emotional spikes. But excitement without grounding leads to volatility. High highs followed by sharp drop-offs. Grounded attraction builds differently. It's slower, deeper, more stable. And when obsession forms here, it lasts. Grounded men are also protected from the most common traps that destroy attraction: neediness, validation seeking, emotional reactivity, outcome dependence. These traps don't need to be actively avoided. They simply don't arise when a man is anchored. This anchoring allows for non-reactivity. Non-reactivity is not emotional suppression. It's emotional containment. When something happens, a grounded man feels it, processes it, and chooses his response. He does not discharge emotion impulsively. He does not make decisions from agitation. Women test for this constantly. Again, not intentionally, instinctively. They observe how a man handles frustration, how he responds to delay, how he reacts to ambiguity, how he behaves when things don't go his way. Each moment provides data. A reactive man fails these tests by revealing that his internal state is easily disturbed. A non-reactive man passes without trying. This creates respect. Respect is the backbone of sustained attraction. Without it, desire flickers. With it, desire consolidates. A woman may feel initial chemistry with many men. She becomes attached to very few. Attachment forms when she senses that a man can hold his center under pressure, that he does not collapse emotionally, that he does not demand regulation from her. This is why non-reactivity increases investment. When a woman cannot easily predict or manipulate your emotional responses, she has to engage more deeply. She pays attention. She wonders. She invests. Investment creates attachment. attachment fuels obsession. But obsession here is not unhealthy fixation. It's emotional gravity. It's the pull towards someone who feels solid in a world that isn't. At this stage, the dynamic shifts again. The man is no longer the one seeking clarity. The woman is. She begins to test more, not to push him away, but to understand the boundaries of his center. Each test is an opportunity. A grounded man does not punish tests. He does not reward them either. He remains consistent, calm, self-directed. That consistency communicates reliability without dependence. Reliability is deeply attractive. This is also where many men sabotage themselves by explaining too much. When tension appears, they rush to clarify. When uncertainty arises, they try to resolve it. They mistake explanation for leadership, but leadership in attraction is not about answers. It's about presence. A man who can sit comfortably in ambiguity communicates confidence. He trusts the process. He does not rush resolution to soothe his own discomfort. Women feel that trust and lean into it. This ability to hold space without filling it is rare, and rarity always increases value. At this point, attraction is no longer about tactics. It's about character. Character is revealed in how you live, not how you perform, in whether your values are stable, in whether your behavior is consistent across contexts, in whether you treat yourself with respect even when no one is watching. Women observe this over time, not consciously, but emotionally. They feel when a man's life has coherence, when his words align with his actions, when his confidence does not fluctuate wildly. Coherence creates safety. Safety allows attachment to deepen. This is why obsession rarely forms around men who are chaotic internally, even if they are exciting externally. Chaos may spark interest, but it cannot sustain desire. Eventually, it becomes exhausting. A grounded man offers something different. He offers refuge, not escape, not fantasy, but a stable, emotional environment. This does not mean being predictable. Predictability and stability are not the same. Stability allows for spontaneity without collapse. Predictability is rigidity. Grounded men are flexible. They adapt without losing themselves. They adjust without abandoning their core. That flexibility within stability is extremely attractive. At this stage, women often feel more themselves around such men, less guarded, less performative, less defensive. That comfort increases emotional intimacy. Emotional intimacy is where obsession becomes personal. It's no longer about status or attraction. It's about how the woman feels when she's with him versus when she's not, when she notices the absence. That noticing is the final indicator. She thinks about him when he's not there, not because he's demanding attention, but because his presence created a distinct internal state. Calm, focus, safety, depth. Those states are hard to replace. Most men chase attention. Very few create emotional environments that women miss. To reach this point, a man has to stop trying to be impressive and start being integrated. His inner world has to match his outer life. His values have to guide his actions. His self-worth has to be internally sourced. This is not easy work. It requires honesty, discipline, letting go of borrowed identities, facing insecurity instead of compensating for it. But the payoff extends far beyond attraction. When you live this way, you don't just attract women differently. You experience life differently. You move with less tension. You respond instead of react. You choose instead of chase. And from that place, attraction becomes inevitable. The final step is knowing how to apply this deliberately, without manipulation, without ego, and without losing your humanity. That's where everything concludes. Before you leave, I want to slow this down and make it human. The real lesson here isn't about attraction. It's about where you place your sense of worth. Most people spend their lives negotiating with the world for permission to feel enough. They chase approval, achievement, attention, and validation, hoping that one day it will finally settle the quiet doubt inside. It rarely does, because nothing external can resolve an internal question. The moment you stop asking, "Am I being chosen?" and start asking, "Am I living in alignment with myself?" your life changes direction. Pressure dissolves. Comparison fades. You begin to move with clarity instead of urgency. And something subtle but powerful happens. People respond differently to you, not because you're trying harder, but because you're no longer trying to be completed by them. This applies far beyond dating. It affects how you lead, how you love, how you handle loss, and how you stand alone. When you are grounded in yourself, rejection doesn't define you. Success doesn't inflate you. Silence doesn't threaten you. You become steady. And steadiness is rare in a restless world. The goal was never to make others addicted to you. The real work is becoming so internally whole that you no longer need to be chased, approved of, or rescued. Ironically, that's when connection becomes real. Not forced, not fragile. Real. If this perspective resonated with you, I'd like to hear from you. Leave a comment below. Where are you watching from? And what time is it for you right now? And if you want more conversations like this, calm, honest, and grounded, consider subscribing to the channel. Not out of obligation, only if it genuinely adds value to your life.